All right, thank you everybody for coming out. My name is Jim Helton. I am the National Field Organizer for American Atheists. I am actually a professional atheist. This is what I do full-time for a living. For those of you who don't know me, I'll give you a little brief history. I co-founded the Tri-State Free Thinkers back in 2012. Has anybody heard of this group?
Yes.
A few people here. Pretty awesome. We founded it on the ACES program. Unlike other groups that originally met that were meetup or Facebook groups, while we utilized those tools, we did it as a business model to be duplicatable around the country within 10 years. We accomplished almost all of our goals in 5 years, and then we've rolled that out to American Atheists. Now, the ACA here is in a very unique situation and is one of the, I would say, arguably one of the leading groups in the entire country in this movement. So you don't have the same challenges that a lot of groups I talk to. But I hope I can challenge you on some of the things you're doing and show you some of the things that are possible, especially with the resources and the great group of people you have here. Our goal is here, I'm going to recap the future of atheist activism, kind of what we're doing as American Atheists, some of our success stories. I'll go into the ACES program a little bit, and then I'll kind of talk about with our directors and affiliates and what that looks like for American Atheists. So in the future of atheist activism, we challenge what is an atheist issue. This was my number one objective. When I came on board, these issues right here is traditionally what most people think of atheist issues. Would you agree? We take down 10 Commandment monuments, we take down big crosses, we remove Bibles, we stop prayer. This is my favorite pastime. We will not stop doing these things. But there is so much more. So the question I proposed is, what about these issues? Are these atheist issues? Would you consider dying with dignity an atheist issue?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about comprehensive sex ed?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
LGBTQ issues?
Yes.
Yep.
Preach. Yeah.
Abortion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Women's rights?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Science and history?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And racial justice?
Take my money.
So here's the thing. When we see groups talk about these issues, and I've seen groups take around, what happens a lot of times within groups or within boards is they disagree. Heard a lot of yeses. I didn't see everybody said shaking yes, but a lot of yeses. But what happens, there's like, that might be a humanist issue, or Jim, I agree with you that women should be treated equally, but that's not an atheist issue. We're an atheist group. We should not take this on. And we've seen this across the country. And ultimately what happened is, because of this, is guess what? Inaction, nothing. And this is across the country. So my goal and why I was hired was to redefine what an atheist issue is. And to make it simple. So if a group or a board or individuals want to take on an issue, you do not have to have this board vote. You can use these 3 criteria to determine if you should. It eliminates a lot of arguments and a lot of things, as long as the group initially agrees to these 3 points. And we'll see if you agree with these 3 points. The first question we ask is, who's behind the issue? Who's driving the bus? Is it religion? Let's go back to the slide. Religion is the wrong side of every single one of those issues. Dying with dignity. Who's against dying with dignity? Catholic Church. Sex ed. Evangelicals. LGBTQ. Too many Christian denominations to mention. Abortion. Women's rights. They're on the wrong side of every single one of those issues. Also, they're equal rights issues. Religion is being used as an excuse to discriminate against a class of people in every single one of those. While we defend people's right to believe whatever they want, they do not have that right to impose that belief on the general public. And that's exactly what's happening on every one of those. And think about this. If we took religion out of the equation on any of those issues, do you think we would be talking about any of them? I would argue that all of them but one would just virtually go away. And that would be racial justice. While the Ku Klux Klan is clearly a Christian hate group, if you took them out of the equation, we would still have a racial problem. But beyond that one, abortion, LGBT rights, sex ed, dying with dignity, the death penalty, we would not be having any of these conversations. It is religion behind this. And the third one, and this was a modification after a year of doing this, is if religion is offered as a solution instead of evidence-based programs. Now that first part of the chart, I told you that's what American Atheists did. My proposal was that second side, that these are all atheist issues, we must be engaged. This third one, never in a million years did I think I would be talking about the weather and gun as atheist issues. And let me explain. And if you want to divide a room quicker, there's nothing quicker than dividing an atheist room by guns. And I'm in Texas. So I feel the need to talk about very such things. And I'll see if I can get this room to agree with me in Texas. Because if I can get Texas to agree with me, I feel like I can get anybody to agree with me on guns. So first of all, here's what we see going around. And these are by our politicians. Governor Utah asked people to pray for snow. You know why? Because they have a drought. They're not conserving water. They're not doing anything they should be doing. They're just like, pray for snow. It worked last year. It'll be fine this year. We did that last year. Direct quote from our public officials. Kevin Swanson, another official. We can stop Hurricane Irma by banning abortion and gay marriage. Like, this is a solution. Not to tackle climate to change. Not to do things that help the environment, but we just got to ban abortion and gay marriage and it'll be fine. We'll stop those hurricanes in their tracks. Florida State Senator, only thoughts and prayers will stop the evil behind school shootings. This was immediately after the Florida kids got shot. And Florida House votes to force schools to display In God We Trust. There are 13 states that require In God We Trust in schools as a result of school shootings. And here's where I want to get you to agree on guns. I don't care if you're for guns or against guns, or what your policy is on guns. That's not what this argument's about. This argument is, if our politicians are saying kids are getting shot, we should do something. The first question I want to get you to agree with me, and since there's a camera here, let me make sure I can hear you, and we have a recorder here. Can we agree thoughts and prayers will not do anything to keep our kids safe?
Yeah.
They will not. What about In God We Trust signs? Will that protect our kids?
No.
What our stance on guns is, we want evidence-based policies. If you are going to do something, it should be based on facts and evidence. Now, it's not my job to get down into the weeds of what that should be, but no matter what it is, if we are going to do something, it needs evidence-based solutions. And that is our argument on every single one of those other issues I showed up. We want evidence-based solutions. And I'm going to make this argument. A lot of people think those issues I put up are controversial. They think sex ed, abortion, LGBT are controversial. I actually disagree. I don't think they're controversial. And I think the solutions are even simpler. The only thing that makes any of those issues controversial is people tend not to like the answers. When you look at what the actual solutions to solving these problems are, people don't like it, and that makes them controversial, and that's why we're not doing evidence-based policies on any of these things. So with this, we can redefine an atheist issue to make it easier for local groups to respond without going through all the conflict and headache and infighting, because this clearly sets that up. And while I, as American atheist, can't respond to every local jackass that says something stupid, you can. And not only, I would say, can you, you should. And I like it because several of you were at the school board meeting calling out our school board on the very such issues. And give them a big round of applause for that. But we not only need to be reactive, we need to be proactive. And that is a new change for American atheists of what we're looking to do, is being being proactive. And so our unofficial slogan is out of the pubs and into the steakhouses. While it is fun to drink beer and bitch about religion, we actually need to be involved in passing policy that's positive. So we are currently tracking 165 bills across the country of bills we're for and bills we're against. Now guess what? We're against way more bills than we're for. And in Texas, you may see like this is hopeless, like I live in Kentucky. But there are states that share our values with these, that we can pass laws. And we're talking like the Patient Right to Know Act. This is basically saying if you're a pregnancy crisis center or a Catholic church that doesn't offer services based on religious beliefs, we're not saying you have to change that at all. What we're saying is you must post it in your lobby and notify the patients as soon as they walk in the door. We will not perform an abortion. We will not give you birth control. We will not tie your tubes. A crisis pregnancy center. We are not a medical facility. We do not have doctors. We are a religious-based facility, and this is our view. That's fine. You just must disclose it. That is a game changer. What about getting comprehensive sex done? There's only 13 states that require it. So we are actually writing testimony statewide so that you can deliver to the steakhouse, representing atheists and representing your local community and group. We will actually write it for you. We will track this for you, and you can actually get on a list to be alerted what's going on in your state. And then if you want to take action, so that we can call your group and say, hey, this bill's going on, would you like to do something about it? And also, with the platform you have here, you can get that out even bigger and wider. Because there's also, anybody here at Project Blitz?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, then I won't spend a lot of time, but this is going around where they're proposing bills left and right all over the country. And they're very strategic. Like in Ohio, they passed 20 abortion restrictions in 6 years. They passed a 6-week abortion ban. The House did. The next day, they passed a 20-week abortion ban. Now, why would you pass a 20-week abortion ban the day after you passed the 6-week abortion ban? Because you knew everybody would get upset about the 6-week, and then the people would fight it, and you would cave and say, okay, we won't do the 6-week, and then the 20-week flies under the radar. They are flooding our government with In God We Trust in all of our schools. They are flooding all these things just hoping something sticks. And then just doing easy things and deteriorating the separation of religion and government. So what American Atheists has done is we created a number of toolkits and presentations to help local groups and local individuals that aren't activists. They aren't full-time. They're just like concerned citizens about these issues, and we can train you step by step to do these things. And they're very effective. And the first one I'll talk about is probably my most passionate, is sex education. And I want you to think about this just for a minute. Our schools are teaching an abstinence-based program. They're saying abstinence is 100% effective. This is being taught in our public schools by churches whose entire religion is founded that a virgin got pregnant. Think about that for a minute. There are only 13 states that require medically and scientifically accurate sex ed. This is a huge issue. So I am going to test Texas on sex ed right here for the people in these rooms. All right? This is from my daughter's sex ed book. This is actually a screen capture of emotional effects. So I'm going to ask you, and I'll just shout it out, because you don't have to read this. The print's a little small, but it'll get bigger. When you think of sex, what emotional effects do you associate with sex?
Woohoo!
Woohoo! That's the first one that I've done in this state, and I love woohoo. Add that to the list. What else do we have? Just shout them out.
Intimacy.
Intimacy.
Joy.
Joy. What else?
Pleasure.
Pleasure.
Release.
Release. Like that one. What else? Anything else? Come on in the back, participate. Any words?
Romantic attachment.
Romantic attachment, love, happiness. There's all sorts of words we can add to this. Well, I hate to say, you have all failed this course.
I figured.
Here are the appropriate words that we teach our kids. Guilt,
Oh, yeah.
disappointment, depression, sadness, worry, loneliness, and loss of self-esteem is how they teach our kids sex. Now I'm going to give them disappointment, because we've all been there, right? That's legit. I think we should prepare our kids. I prepared my kids like, it's a thing. It's going to happen. But the rest of this is horrible. Like, it is in such a negative light. They taught my son in his school that condoms have a 35% failure rate. They shouldn't use them.
Oh my God.
He raised his hand and said it's 2% if you would teach us how to use them. He then asked me to take him to Planned Parenthood, which they gave him a dozen shirts that he passed out to his schoolmates that said, I stand with Planned Parenthood. And then he wore an atheist shirt every single day the church was there. Woo! My favorite was, we'll convert for evidence.
I like that.
I know. This is so effective that the Planned Parenthood in Ohio has offered us a contract to use our toolkit. While Planned Parenthood is the #1 sex educator in the country, and they teach it best. We're not trying to teach sex ed, let me be clear. But where we've been effective is, we've been effective in getting schools, even in Kentucky and Ohio, to throw out the church-based system and agree to teach a proper sex ed program. That is where we come in. And we've been so effective doing it, and our approach is a little different. It's not American Atheists going in there, or a Planned Parenthood, or a sex educator. We're teaching you to do it. We're teaching your kids to do it. We have students going in there where we're training them behind the scenes as concerned citizens and parents to go in there. And we have thrown these programs out in as less than 30 days, up to 6 months, depending on what time the school year is. This is super effective. And it works. And we have this toolkit. So if there's people in this room that are interested, all you have to do, I'll give you my contact information. We will send you this toolkit. We will set up trainings and help you do this. And our goal, as I've been traveling Texas, is every city I've talked to about sex ed has acknowledged this is a problem. And just think I was in 8 cities in 7 days. Just think of all those cities start tackling this issue in their area. And why I'm here today telling you this is an atheist issue, what I'm telling you when I go out to the public, you know what the #1 thing we never bring up is? Religion. I've talked to people here in Texas and they go, I've tried to do this. I went to the school board. I told them this is a church coming in. I told them this is religion, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, and they ignored you. I never bring up religion. I go to that school board and say a couple things. When it comes to sex ed, I want to see if we can agree on 3 things. The most important parts of sex ed should be to reduce teen pregnancy, to reduce teen STIs, and reduce the need for abortion. Can we agree on those things that a sex curriculum should do?
Yes.
And even the most conservative religious person says yes. And I said, can we agree if something is harmful that we should remove it? They often say yes. I asked them what they're teaching in the school. And the most common answer is, I don't know. They're not being deceptive. They're not being dishonest. They don't know. If I ask for a copy of the curriculum, they often cannot give it to me. because they don't have it. That should be warning flag number one. Once I get the curriculum, now I've been doing this enough, I can pick it apart right then and there, but I don't. I say, let me review this, and I'll get back to you, I appreciate it. And then when I review it, I come back to them the next week and say, you know how we agreed on we wanted to decrease teen pregnancy, decrease teen STI, and decrease the need for abortion? They say yes. I said, not only does this program not do any of those three things, it actually increases those three things. My goal is that we have an evidence-based program to share our community values. And sometimes they'll say, well, this isn't a religious program. And I'll be like, I never said it was. What I'm just asking for is an evidence-based program that will accomplish the things that we agree on. And if you're concerned about the parents, there's a poll in Texas, in the United States, 95% people support proper sex ed. I repeat that, 95%.
What do they consider proper sex ed, though?
Evidence-based programs.
Oh, okay. All right.
If
That's
you drop-
specific about that.
If you drop the comprehensive, like in Kentucky, it's not 85%. But again, it is overwhelming majority, where they are flat out lying to our kids. Like, even if you don't want your kids to have sex in high school, telling them condoms have a 35% failure rate not to use them is harmful. Like, we are flat out lying to kids. That's just the beginning of it. They also told my daughter if she had sex before marriage, she was like pre-chew chewing gum. And then she had to write a paragraph. What did Alicia mean by pre-chew chewing gum? I could go on and on. I do a whole hour on this alone. But here we know the answers. And Colorado is a leading example. They put comprehensive sex ed in all their schools. They also, which we probably wouldn't be able to, I think we could do in Texas. Texas probably won't do this next part though. They gave out free contraceptives, including implants and IUDs to all their teens. Their teen abortion, teen STI, and teen pregnancy rate fell by over 40% overnight. Just like that. So when I say these aren't controversial issues, we know what the answer is. Like, it's simple. It's easy. People don't like the answer. Because the answer is, tell kids about sex and you can keep them protected. But they don't want that. They also, the misconception is this is going to cause them to have sex earlier. That's not true.
It's the opposite.
So what I always do in talking about this issue when the principal or the parents say, well, we don't want kids are having sex early, I never respond. I always say, if it didn't do that, would you be okay with this program then? I always ask them a question. Because if they jump to another target, then why address that one? If they say, well, but Jim, that is my number one concern. Well, that's a good concern, and if it caused kids to have sex earlier, I would be concerned with you too. Let me do some research. Oh, I happen to have it here. It doesn't do those things. But I always ask the question, and you need to be asking questions versus talking the majority of the time so that they're responding and saying, if that wasn't true, would you be okay with this? Or if it didn't do those things, would you be okay with this? And then you have the facts and evidence on
So do you have all these stats?
Yes. Now, I a lot of times made these for specific for Kentucky. We're working with Vicki to put them and with the other directors to put them for Texas. So make them for states. And this presentation can be done. There's a whole hour presentation of this where you can insert your state slides if you wanted to present this to another group. Or if Vicki can do it if I'm not here. But yeah, I can get you all the information. We're in the process of putting this together. What about LGBTQ issues? You know, when we got marriage equality, everybody said hooray and said we have equality. Is that true? No. How many states do you think can be refused housing? Any guesses?
35.
Not quite that high. 30.
Yeah.
Only 20 states protect housing. What about refused service? Only 19 protect. And can you be fired? Only 20 states protect. So when you look at this as the state of Texas, as I look at the state of Kentucky, can I take this issue on in the state or federally? In the current environment, let's be honest, probably not. But in your cities, you can. Does Austin have a fairness ordinance that protects the LGBTQ community? I would check.
Yeah.
And if they don't,
For housing? I don't think they do for housing.
then that's something we can change. It's Austin. We shouldn't have a problem changing that. We can go after cities. And you know how I know we can change cities? Because in Kentucky, we have 10 cities that protect LGBTQ rights, even in cold country. And if we can do 10 cities in Kentucky, I am sure we can do a couple in Texas. And the nice thing is, with this, a lot of times you don't even have to lead the charge. Because you know why? There are groups doing this, but they need people to show up. So in Paducah, Kentucky, which nobody knows where it is, and that's my point, The front page of the paper, has a sign which you'll see back there. When equality is under attack, atheists show up. And while we did not start that, and this is one of my favorite signs, here it is. Front page of the paper was it. We did not start that charge, but the most important thing we could do as a group is we showed up. They asked us to show up, and we did. And we far outnumbered the religious hate groups that opposed. And we got it passed. And when groups, we go into school, or we go into city councils where they say, oh, LGBTQs already has rights, that's a waste of time. They flat out lie to me, or they say, we hate them, we're not doing it. Where I live, every representative for the last 12 years has ran unopposed. I've had one choice every time for the last 12 years. And so what we did is, while we're a nonprofit, we can't endorse candidates of who or what should run, but we screamed at the top of our lungs, run against these assholes. And every single one of them is being run opposed. Every single one that wanted to discriminate. Again, this is a popular issue. The majority of Americans agree with us on LGBTQ equality, and this is something that we should take on. These are just a few of the types of bills used to discriminate. The most scariest one that's getting the most traction is probably this one, adoption and foster care. Because a lot of the adoption and foster care are getting federal money, they're religious organizations, and refuse to let LGBTQ adopt. And this is being done at a federal level and state level. This one probably scares me the most out of all these. What about Gideon's Bibles? Do you have a problem with Gideon's passing out Bibles to elementary and middle schools here in Austin? I got a mixed bag yes, no?
Yeah.
There's a secret. So the very first activism I got involved with the ACLU to take on the Gideons. And I poured through over 1,000 pages of their documents, their bylaws, their code of conduct, how they do things, and I learned a bunch of interesting things. They have several distribution methods of how they do things. But I do a whole hour talk on this one as well. We have a toolkit for this. But this is the sentence, word for word. This is all you need to know. If any method of distribution has the potential to create media publicity, the distribution must be canceled or postponed. So I've heard groups, I don't think it's true in this one, but I've heard groups say they can't get the media to cover it, the mainstream media. So what I want to challenge you is you need to think like Fox News. If your press release is like Fox News, you'll get their attention. So you know what press release I sent out on this? Atheists descend on public schools. How much press do you think I got? When I did any of my interviews, do you think I talked about atheists descending on public schools? No. Do you think that made one headline? No. Your headline, your press release does not have to be your talking point. Because if you put atheists are upset because Gideons are passing out Bibles, I may have got some press. They were passing out 5 schools simultaneously all on the same day. We showed up with our atheist books and they showed up 2-0. The press accused us of making up a story because the Gideons denied ever going to be there and they didn't know what we were talking about until the superintendent provided a letter on the Gideons letterhead requesting to be there that day. And every year since, we go back on that day, and if they're not there, we don't pass out any books anymore. We just leave. But we always go back just to see. The media is your friend on this issue. What about voting? Texas is ranked as one of the worst states in voter turnout, by far. But based on religious affiliation, who is the largest voting bloc based on religious affiliation? Any guesses? They're on the list. They're number 2. Any other guesses?
Baptist?
No.
Oh, they're not. Jehovah's Witness?
Nope. Protestant, Catholic, Evangelical, and us. We are now the largest voting bloc in the country. Now that includes atheist, agnostic, deist, spiritual people. That's not all atheists. But we are the largest voting bloc. Now if you want to pick apart this argument, there's 2 ways you could do it. You could say, Jim, we're not a voting bloc. And 2, because we don't vote on a single issue like the evangelicals do. And 2, we don't actually vote. And we don't. And people in the room always say, why vote? How many members you got in your group and how many members are here? We don't vote. Do you know what the evangelical voter turnout was in the 2016 election? Yeah, that about sums it up. But let's put a number to it. 80? No, too low. 86% voter turnout. 81% voted for Trump. So if you want to appeal to the evangelicals, what is the one issue you must support? Or be against, I should say. What is the one issue they care about the most?
Abortion.
Everybody in this room knows that. Everybody in the country knows that. So if you want to appeal to the evangelicals, you say, even the people that were for abortion, as soon as they run for office, they just switch, like, oh, I'm against abortion. And they don't care if they were for it all their lives. And they get 86% of the voter turnout. But what issues do we care about? If I went around this room and asked you, what is the single most important issue to you? Would our list look something like this? There's a bunch of lists. And I had a few ladies yell at me earlier this week to shout out things that weren't on my list. I go, one, I ran out of space. And two, you're proving my point. So why would politicians cater to us, which they don't? Because one, we don't turn out the vote. And two, they have to know all these issues. Where they can get an 86% of voter turnout with just one issue, and it doesn't matter what they do with everything else. So here's my challenge. We must become single issue voters. You're laughing at me, I know. And we must unite under one banner. And what do all these issues have in common? Equality. If you're not for equal rights, we cannot vote for you. And I want to show you what that may look like. Dying with dignity is an equal rights issue. They're discriminating against our elderly. Comprehensive sex education is an equal rights issue. They're discriminating against our kids. Abortion and women's rights is an equal rights issue. They're discriminating against women. LGBTQ is an equal rights issue. They're discriminating. Oh, wait a minute. They already do that. And what else did the LGBTQ community do? They came out as being LGBTQ. So once you turn an issue into an equal rights issue, and two, you come out of the closet, it is a game changer, and the majority of Americans support LGBTQ issues. We can do the same with every issue on here. We must come out of the closet, and we must let people know these are equal rights issues, because they are. If we do that, now, while the Mike Pences of the world and a few politicians are uber religious, we acknowledge them and they're scary. The majority of politicians aren't that religious. They go that way because they get an 86% of vote turnout on one issue. If we turned out the vote and we're larger and we held people accountable for discrimination and equal rights, they would cater to us. But until then, we don't vote and we have too many issues we spat at them, they will continue to ignore us. What about government invocations? Anybody deliver a government invocation here? Nobody. Let me challenge you on this one. These words here are word for word from the Supreme Court ruling of Greece versus Galway. Anybody familiar with that? In New York City, they basically said, hey, in schools you can't pray. But in this Greece versus Galway decision, they said in city councils and states you can't pray. But you can't proselytize. And word for word, atheists are allowed to deliver invocations. This is a pretty cool thing. And I'll give you my favorite story. Justin Scott, state director for Iowa, made it his personal mission to deliver an invocation in any city that offered a religious invocation. And he went through, some of them did it very easily, some we had to write a few letters to, give them a little nudge to do the right thing. But one city and one mayor said, this is a Christian city and there will be no atheists in this town. He ripped up the letter we sent him and was defiant all the way through and through. He was up for election running unopposed. And one gentleman in that town said, I am going to run against the mayor. He was not an atheist, but he ran on equality and said, this town should accept every religion, no matter what religious belief you are, not just Christian, and even those that aren't. And they said, it's too late to run, we can't add you to the ballot, but you can be a write-in candidate. Well, we know how that goes, right? He won by a landslide. He won 65% of the vote against the mayor that discriminated on an atheist issue. The very first meeting, the mayor called Justin Scott and said, would you like to deliver a secular invocation? Do you know what Justin Scott said? No. And the mayor was just as confused as some of you are here looking at me. And Justin said, if you wanted to be inclusive, you would do a moment of silence. While I could deliver one humanist invocation this week, it'll be business as usual with all Christian prayers after. If you truly want to be inclusive and your platform is run for equality, do a moment of silence. Because then everybody could pray they want to pray or not pray at all, and nobody would be imposing their beliefs on the public. And the mayor at the very next meeting proposed that, and they passed it. And they eliminated government invocations in that city in Iowa. That is the power of one person doing one thing. Getting involved with our local government is one of the most powerful things we could do. We need to register people to vote. We have the toolkit to do that. We need to be involved with our cities. You see in God We Trust stickers everywhere? You know, on the police cars, do you have that? We have never removed one of those. But any city that I am involved with, where I am working with them on equal rights issues, has never put an In God We Trust sticker on it. Because they either called me and said, Jim, what do you think about this? And I give them my opinion, and they go, I thought you would say that. This is probably a bad idea. Or they don't even call me. They just shot it down and told me after the fact. Because they are aware of the atheists in their community. The other one is protesting. This is probably my personal favorite. And this is probably what I'm most famous for. This is in front of the Ark Encounter where we put up Genocide in Incest Park. And we did this on their opening day. Now some of you may be a little offended by this, but this goes to my point. Almost every news outlet around the world, and let me repeat that, this isn't nationally, around the world was writing positive stories about the Ark Encounter and what a great project it was. This $100 million project. While atheists were picking it apart, talking about the problems it had, the mainstream media was not covering that story. It was overwhelmingly positive. The mere threat of putting this up got international attention. We were doing Miami Herald, New York Times, Washington Post. There were 6 documentary film crews at this protest. We Believe in Dinosaurs comes out next year. I was in the Bill Nye film that came out this spring. It was everywhere. We were doing interviews with Vice News. We were doing interviews with New Zealand, Germany, France. They were flying out, driving out, all over just to talk to us. Almost every paper after this protest and that sign went up, including the Christian Times, the Christian Daily, and the Christian World News, all had a negative spin on the Ark Encounter. They all talked. Now, in the beginning, when we threatened to put this up, this is what everybody talked about. But on the opening day, do you think this is what we talked about? No. What did we talk about? We talked about equal rights. How they sent a letter to the state saying they were a for-profit business and received up to $18 million. At the same time, they sent a letter to the city saying they were a church, they didn't have to pay taxes. They're lying to our kids about basic science. While discriminating, LGBTQ can't work there, atheists can't work there, Catholics can't work there, Jewish people can't work there. 2% of all employees' paychecks in the area have to pay 2% of their paycheck to pay back the $75 million junk bond loan of the Ark. Even employees that don't work at the Ark have to pay this. 75% of the real estate tax goes to pay back the $65 million junk bond loan. It doesn't go to the county or city. The county gave them over 100 acres for $1 and over $100,000 in cash. If you're single, you have to sign a vow of chastity saying you can't have sex till you're married. And a statement of faith saying the earth is only 6,000 years old. Shall I continue? We successfully changed the story. Almost all of this was negative. And we thought it was a one-time thing. Fast forward a year later, all the press started to turn positive again. Not all of it, but we started to see that shift. So we decided to do it again and brought all the negative attention back onto it. And we continue to do this every year. And I invite the Atheist Community of Austin, you should come out July 7th of next year or the year after and protest the Ark. It is a protest unlike you will ever see. And we've had the Freedom from Religion there, American Atheists, Secular Coalition, Haven't Met to the Friendly Atheists, Aaron Rosbin a number of times, Seth Andrews. And these are people that see a lot of things. And they said they've never seen a protest like this before. It is an amazing experience. But I will tell you this, and I think this is where the atheist community has done a little bit of disservice on the messaging on this. Do you know how much money the Ark Encounter generated in 2017? Not much. What do you consider not much?
Much less than they wanted.
So here's the thing. Here's the tale of two stories. Ken Ham promised they would have 2.5 million visitors. He had less than 1 million. He bragged he got 1 million. He would double his attendance the next year. He still got less than 1 million. And he's lying about his attendance. So the message has been Ken Ham lies, which we should call him out on, but the Ark Encounter is going bankrupt. And it's going to be for sale soon and all this stuff. The first part's true about him lying about his numbers. The second part, not so much. They generated $69 million in revenue in 2017. The Ark Encounter is a cash cow. The cities and counties gave away everything to the Ark. They are on the verge of bankruptcy. Even the mayor's own family business that's been owned for more years than we can count went out of business. The city and county are not benefiting from this. But the Ark is making money. Now, the cities and counties away from the Ark, like if you get into Florence, Cincinnati, Lexington, Louisville, they're actually seeing a boom from hotels, and it is bringing attendance. But they gave away nothing to have the art there, and they're receiving all the benefits. The actual county and city, they gave away everything. It's actually costing them money. They were losing money by having the art there.
Oh, that's great.
So this brings me to my one point on protests. I received some negative feedback from this thing, and I want to go over the negative feedback. One was, and this one made me think for about 30 seconds, was, young kids might drive by and see the word genocide and incest mark. And I said, that's fair. One, give me a better word, and no one's ever given me a better word to this day 3 years later. Two, if this causes a parent to have an uncomfortable conversation about the Bible with their kids, I am perfectly okay with that. The second one was, we're advertising for them. Now I want you to think about this. Do you think people flew in from New Zealand and Germany to see me? Do you think the Bill Nye film came in to see me, or Fox and Friends and the New York Times and the Washington Herald all came to see me? I would like to think so. But the answer is no. They came to see the art. They stopped by to see me because we were here. We didn't bring them press. We changed the story. We completely changed the narrative. If, like the Westboro Baptist Church, Ken Ham, if these hate groups have a series of Frenzy of Press, you should protest with the objective of changing the story. And never let anybody tell you different that you're bringing them press. If you're talking about a little group that nobody knows about and nobody's talking about, and there's no attention to it, then you should not bring attention to it. You should just let it go. Like there was a march walking across the bridge with 5 people, and we need to stand up for morality. I'm like, no, nobody knows about it, let it go. Some groups disagreed. They brought 150 protesters to these 5 people. The 5 people said they feared for their lives, canceled it, and made the protesters look like idiots. And they messed the message that the protesters were violent and all these things. They went poorly. And I tried to warn them not to do it. And the protesters brought all the press. The 5 people had 0 press. That was a mistake. So this goes into our ACES program. And this is going full circle to why I started with the Tri-State Freethinkers. We found that this is a business model to be duplicatable, which stands for activism, community, education, and social. We want it to be a fully functional nonprofit with the #1 goal of providing a community for atheists. Not just a meetup, not just a Facebook, those are good tools. We needed a true sense of community. And if you look at these, on the activism side, who does that appeal to? Like that genocide, that's your firebrand atheist. That's me. We also, and I don't think you have this problem here as much as other groups, but the 3 biggest challenges these groups face are lack of money, lack of diversity, and lack of volunteers. And this ACES program solves all 3 of those. The activism piece, guess which one I head up? Activism, maybe, it's kind of my passion. Community service, who does that appeal to? You're humanist, being good without God? Who do you think would lead that? Somebody that's passionate about this. A person that would lead the community service is going to be very different than somebody that wants to lead to the activism. What about education? Who does that appeal to? Your skeptics, your free thinkers, your critical thinkers,
Highly educated blue-haired ladies.
the educated blue-haired ladies. I'm not gonna lie, I prefer purple.
No.
It's a tough choice.
It does.
There is a right choice.
Oh, damn. Equal rights, dude.
I know, I discriminate based on hair color. I like purple. No, blue is good. We accept everybody. And what about social? Do you know what the #1 reason people join groups around the country is? Social. You know what the #1 reason groups go to die is? Social. That's all they do. And this social brings it all together. If you need a ride to the doctors, you used to call your church. If you need help moving, you call your church. We have a community. We can fulfill all the things, meet all the needs. When a group says this isn't what we're about, I would say it's not in replacement of, this is an addition to. And you, the ACA, are in a much better position than any group I've probably spoken to. But I want to challenge you with this piece. You're in a much better position on all these things. But the magic of this ACES program is putting it together. And if you're going to get anything out of my entire talk, it's this slide here. Take a picture of it, or I will send it to you. I will email it. Let's get this out. This is the key to the Tri-State Freethinker's success. And this is the game changer. So let me explain this slide. Have you ever gone to a talk and said, that's an amazing speaker? That issue really upsets me. We should do something about that. And then the next month, that is an amazing speaker. That issue really upsets me. We should do something about that. And a year later, there's no change. So we have a rule. You can't come piss us off unless you give us something to do about it. And let me give you a real life example that'll put all three of these things together. We decided to bring in Planned Parenthood to speak to the group about sex education, abortion, women's rights, all the things. Our education department set that up. They also contacted the activism part and said, what can we do about these issues? And at that time, we weren't super organized and we didn't have all the things. So we wanted to do a lobby day, but we couldn't do it. We didn't have the resources, the money, or the know-how at that time. And they said, we're doing a lobby day in a couple months. It's like, we'll show up. The most important thing we can do as atheists is show up. We did their lobby day. They did a state house protest, which we showed up. They asked for a phone bank every Monday from 5 to 8 for the next couple months about an issue. Not for a candidate, but about an issue that was on the ballot. And I said, every Monday I could probably only get 2 to 3, maybe 4 people tops. They go, we're only looking for 8 to 10. If you brought 2 to 4, you would be the best group ever, which we did. The other key thing with this is, on this educational meeting, while I look at this room, they were never our event solely. Like, we met the first Wednesday every month at the same place. Just like you meet here, set time, you did. It's a good thing to do. But we asked Planned Parenthood, would you like to co-host this event with us? Would you like to invite your members? And they did. When we did this, we co-hosted this event, not just with us and Planned Parenthood, with 4 or 5 other organizations. We also want to do a community service project around there. Now, a community service project around Planned Parenthood is a little more complicated. It's not as easy as an environmental issue where we could adopt the highway or something like that. But there was a women's shelter which we had members work at, but you had to be highly trained, you had to go through all this training, you had to do this. But what they desperately needed was women hygiene products. So we asked at the protest, can you bring women's hygiene products? And we had a big pickup truck for it. We had to call in a second one because we collected 2 truck beds of women's hygiene products at the protest. And then, when it was all said and done, after a whole quarter of working with Planned Parenthood, where our members and their members were intertwined, we drank beer and bitched about religion. And how many members do you think became our members? More than I can count. How many members of ours became theirs? And you get the stereotype that, atheists are a bunch of old white guys, and we suck. I get it. But the Tri-State Freethinker Board is usually 70% women. Because early on, we had a true partnership with Planned Parenthood. Now, before you call Planned Parenthood, like a few eager people did and said, I want to partner with you. They'll be like, I don't know who you are, and they won't give you the time of day. The first thing we did was, hey, we would like to volunteer. What do you need from us? What's your next protest? What's your next foment? We just showed up. And we continued to show up. And we continued to do anything they needed. We said, we'll show up. And eventually, we became true partners. And we started co-hosting events and doing all these things together. And we became a true partner. This is the power of change. And this isn't just with Planned Parenthood. We did this with the LGBTQ community. We did this with the ACLU. We did this on immigration. We did this on the death penalty. Every issue that I put up there, we had a co-hosted meeting where we had all 4 of the ACEs working together for change. And my goal is, this can be overwhelming, is to start with 1. Like, as American atheists, I am not here to dictate what you should do or how you should do it. You have an amazing organization, do amazing things. But what I am here to offer you is a cafeteria plan. I offered you a lot of issues. My ask is, can you pick one? And let's go after it together, and we'll help you with it. And as you get on that issue, like I did with sex ed, then we wanted to do LGBTQ issues, and somebody was really taking the lead on sex ed, so I passed it off to somebody else, and I helped the LGBTQ. Then someone goes, that's really passionate about that. I handed that off, and then I went on to my next issue. We started with 1 issue a year for our first 2 years. And now we're handling over a dozen issues where somebody's in charge of each issue because of what they're passionate about. We're diverse because when we bring on an issue, we're co-hosting that event with that group, which brings in diversity from their members and our members. It also brings in money. Like, while I like drinking beer and bitching about religion, people don't donate to such things. If you are actually passing legislation in your school board and your city councils, and you're doing community service work and you're helping people, people get excited about that. They will donate money to that. And do you know who the Tri-State Freethinkers' largest donors are in Kentucky? Duke Energy, General Electric, Amazon, Kroger.
I can't wait to tell my father-in-law.
We will be on the city of Cincinnati's payroll with over thousands of employees as of this fall, where you can make a payroll deduction as a city official or employee, and the city will match that donation to the local atheist organization because of this. This is a game changer. The mayor has asked the atheists to speak to city council on issues. Politicians, the best compliment I got is, Jim, when I'm at a protest and I see you, I know I'm on the right side of the issue. Best compliment I ever received. I can speak at any rally or any event I want to when it comes to any of those issues because we became a true partner. If any organizer tries to do an event and they call any professional organizer in the greater Cincinnati area, the very first thing they say is, have you called the atheist group? Because they show up, they have everything you need, they'll help you, even if it's a religious thing. You use the word atheist, you can change an individual's mind. You stand up for equal rights and you're embedded in your community this way, you change the way an entire community views atheism. The American Atheist Convention is coming to Cincinnati Easter weekend next year. And think about this, Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati fought over where the Atheist Convention was going to go. We want your business. The hotels said, we will do whatever it takes. We need you. We're fighting over us. The city rolled out the red carpet. I looked at the hotel rooms. They were $339 a night at the hotel we picked. They were $109 for the convention. That's how bad they wanted our business.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection. Let's try again in a moment.
Somehow I thought.
Trying to register for the convention, it's a good call. I like it. That is acceptable. But this shows just how we changed that entire community. You know, where people said, in Kentucky, 5 years ago, we were the only ones. People were afraid to use the word atheist. And anytime I walk down the street, people are like, I was afraid to use the word atheist till I seen your group out there. And, so putting all this together is a game changer. It is a game changer in the community. And we were talking about this before we started. The Atheist Community of Austin is probably one of the most famous groups in the world as far as local groups go. By far. But in your own backyard, somebody was a few feet away from your building and they said, there's an atheist group in Austin? They had no clue. And that, I would say, needs to change. And I think it's easily changeable to have your community. And you could be a powerhouse where when politicians run in my area, they often want to meet me. I'm like, I can't endorse you, I'm a nonprofit. But the fact that they want to speak to our group about issues. Multiple politicians, school board members, city council, state representatives are asking, can I come to your meeting, please, and speak about this issue? I'm like, you can't campaign, but you can speak about an issue if we agree on it and tell us what's going on with that issue. That is the power of change we have made in that community. The other piece of this, and this is what puts it all together. When I started with American Atheists in 2017, we had 10 directors was being nice. I thought we had 30, we had 10, and that was because if you responded to an email me within a week, I considered you an active director. The bar was pretty low. We have changed our structure. Not only, we don't just have state directors, we have regional directors. We have 3. We have Arden Ra, Jen Scott, and Sam McGuire. 3 of the best directors, I would say, in the country. They do multiple states. They are absolutely fantastic. We also now have 17 state directors. So we basically, between the regional and state, we doubled our directors in 1 year. But this is the new initiative that I'm most excited about. And this is a game changer also. We have 31 assistant directors. Our goal is to put a director within each group, within each city. We currently do not have one in Austin. What that director does is creates a 2 partnership between our 2 groups. Because all those toolkits I showed you, that director would get direct access to every single one of those toolkits, which then, when the group asks or the board asks for something, you can immediately give them anything they want. This is to share everywhere, but you don't have to call me. You have direct access to our entire Google Drive, to all the presentations, to all the things. If you need help with it, we will obviously train you on it or send somebody out. You also get these amazing signs. Thoughts and prayers for child, thoughts and actions. There's a whole slew of them. Depending on what type of event, we will give you the signs to protest. I asked what my budget was on these signs. And they said, Jim, if they are protesting against something or marching for something, we have no budget. This is what we were designed to do. We will support the local groups and community, and we will send out thousands and thousands of signs. And if we run out, we will send more. Buttons, stickers, and t-shirts, I have a limited small budget. Those are fine. But actually making a change in your community and how powerful it is when people say atheists, show up because you actually have an atheist sign letting people know you're there. So what I recommend is if you have the atheist sign and your t-shirt of your local group, they know you're there. And it is a game changer. We have over 200 affiliates. and we have about 11 local partners. No one knows what the difference is. And before, there really was no difference. We put you as a blip on a map, so occasionally people would look and say, oh, there's this cool group in Austin, and they would go. We want to change that. We want to be attached at the hip as much as you want. We want to be a resource for you. If you need things, help with a press release, help with a toolkit, we will help you. We want to come out here every year. And depending on what you need, if you need help with the sex ed and organizing, I will come out. I will train online. If you're doing a lot of separation, religion, and government, I'll send my attorney. If you're doing with policy where you're actually going after state legislation, city council, I'll send my legal and policy director. We want to provide support like you've never seen before. Again, this is a game changer. I think affiliates across the country have been neglected, not just by American Atheists, but you could argue as the national communities as a whole. And I am working with all of them in agreement that we, as all of our national groups, need to support local movements more. Because how does this affect? If we start holding school boards accountable, those school board members, what? End up running for city council. Those city council ones usually end up running for their state legislation, and the state legislation you end up running federal. If we can elect good people and hold them accountable, this is a game changer. Because our number one opponent to all these issues is not the Christian right, it's the people that agree with us, but are afraid of the religious right. With the amount of press and the amount of attention I bring, I will tell you in my area, they are much more afraid of me than the religious right, because I am the guy who put up a genocide and incest billboard in their backyard. I am the guy that called out atheist descent on public schools. I am the person that said the principal wanted to increase abortion rates in their city. Because I grabbed their attention. So when I go into a place and I am super nice and super cooperative, they're like, Jim, we will work with you under one condition. You know what that one condition always is? You don't go to the media. And I was like, do the right thing and I'll be as quiet as a mouse. But they fear me more than them. And the last thing is this. Anybody know my daughter Kelly?
Yeah.
And I don't want to make just this about her, but she's 12 years old. That's the cover of the USA Today for International Women's Day. Our students have a voice. We must give them a platform to speak. They don't listen to old white guys as much anymore, but if you get a student willing to speak, we need to give them a microphone. We shouldn't force them to speak, but we need to give them a voice. And the interesting thing about her progress, where she is speaking to crowds of 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 15,000 people, national conventions, she misses so much school, it's amazing. Said, you get straight A's, I will give you a real life education anywhere you want to go. But she heard a speech similar to this. It was actually the Planned Parenthood example I gave you. And she came to me after the meeting upset and said, Dad, why am I not equal to a man? And I'm like, and as any good father said, I said, you're not in this society. It upset her. And at the next Planned Parenthood rally, she's like, Dad, I want to say something. This was a daughter who wouldn't speak to a stranger, who was an introvert and shy. And do you know how many words she said at that first speech with a megaphone? She could muster 2 sentences. That's all she could muster, and she wrote down 2 sentences, and she said those 2 sentences. The very next rally, I asked Planned Parenthood if I could give up part of my time. There was an hour's worth of speakers, and I was to speak for 3 minutes. And I said, can I give up part of my 3 minutes to my daughter? And they said, sure, Jim, whatever you want. We were able to muster a 30-second speech together. Keep in mind, she was 30 seconds out of an entire hour. And the only thing anybody ever remembers from that rally was this little 12-year-old girl that spoke for 30 seconds. We got her up to 2.5 minutes at the March for Science, and she was the highest ranked speaker out of all the scientists that spoke at the March for Science. We got her to the Women's March of 15,000 people, where she was the keynote because they asked an atheist to do it, and they asked Kelly to do it, not me. They went from asking me to asking her, where she read the Bible, how women must remain silent and subservient, and she got 15,000 people to boo the Bible. And then she went into a rant how she would not be silent, and it was fantastic. But you should have seen the looks on her faces when they saw the atheist kid reading the Bible. They were confused. So now she speaks all over the country, and she can go on for 10 minutes. She can go on as long as you want, and she is well polished. She also testified at the Ohio State House against the 6-week abortion ban, where all the senators were on their phones, walking away as Nehra was speaking, as we were trying to speak. They weren't paying a bit of attention until she grabbed the mic, and they all lifted their heads and put down their phones. It's like, what's going on? And she grabbed the media's attention. One more. She met Hugh Laurie at Oklahoma City. And as any good parent, I told her she had to watch the first season of House or she was not allowed to go. Now she's on season 4 on her own will, which I'm very proud. But when she met Hugh Laurie saw her and goes, when they were explaining some of the things she's done, Hugh Laurie goes, I know who you are. I've seen you on TV. Because she went to a school board meeting and city council meeting with my bulletproof vest over her shirt, and she wrote school uniform across it. And Fox picked it up. And I tell you this not just to brag about my daughter, which I'm super proud about, but she was that little kid that heard about an issue and got passionate about it, and we gave her a voice, even though mom tried to stop her. And I'll tell you that story later. So as parents, I would say this. It is our job as parents, I would not say to protect our kids, and that may be, and let me explain. Our job as parents is to explain the consequences of our child's actions to them, and it's up to them to decide if they want to continue. And that's what I do with my daughter. If you do this, here are the consequences for your actions. Are you okay with it? And if they say yes, then who am I to tell them? As my wife told my son going into high school, you're a freshman, keep your head down. You might want to tone it down a little bit. So on the very first day of school, he wore American Atheist 50th anniversary and said, Mom, let's just get this out of the way now. And the first 5 days of school, he wore an Atheist t-shirt. He knew the consequences of his actions. We backed his play. It was awesome. I was super proud of it. But also, if they don't want to speak, we shouldn't have to. But you have a platform at the ACA, which is amazing. And I bet you have some kids with some opinions. You know, and if you could help them and coach them, and we're happy to, how to speak. And the best thing is we can even help write some of that and help them like get their words, and we can help coach them to give them that voice where they can do this. I would love, and you mentioned to me, which I was excited, I would love to have some more students on some of these shows to talk about, because people listen. And the last thing, at the Tri-State Freethinkers page, we've had Hedda Mehta, we've had American Atheists, we've had Aaron Ra, Matt Delhunty. Over half of our views on our page are Kelly, over all them people combined. You know, so getting our students to speak. So here's my ask in my very last slide. If we are going to change our community, it's vital that we do a couple things. One, we must support our local organizations. I don't know what the financial structure is, or if you do memberships or donations, but we must support our local organizations as a community to do things. We also must support the national organizations as well. The ARC project is a $100 million project. Our budget's not that. I imagine yours isn't either. But at some level, financial support is key to do the things that we want to do. But more than that, I think the most important thing we need is volunteers. In order to do the ACES program, Eric can't come to me and say, Jim, I love it, we're going to do it. It takes people. It takes people here. It takes people out there that say, you know what, I love these educational meetings, I'll help with that. Hey, I'm a humanist, I really want to do community service, how can I help? Hey, what you said about sex education, can you send me that toolkit? It takes a village. If you want to create a true sense of community, it can't be 1 or 2 people doing all the things. It takes an army of people. Just like I'm sure you all know the Atheist Experience, there's 2 people in front of the camera? How many people are behind that making that work? I don't even know. I get to go see it and check it out, which I'm excited about. But it's way more, I'm sure, than the 2 people in front of the camera. And if you do this, it is a game changer for the atheist community. It is a game changer. And American Atheists' number 1 and 2 goals are what? Does anybody know? To normalize atheism and the true separation of church and state. And what's funny is when I pitch this, if you want to normalize atheism and you want true separation of church and state, the best way to do that is through this ACES program and standing up for a law. By doing those things, we are completing our number 1 and 2 objectives. Thank you for everybody for having me out. I really appreciate it.